Today's session for Fundamentals of Management, we are going to talk about controlling. In this presentation, basically, we will deal with the concept of controlling, its features, and the process involved. So, moving ahead, let's discuss the literal meaning of controlling. First of all, as we know, control is an important function of management. It is a process that measures current performances and guides it towards some predetermined objectives. It involves setting up standards for individual and organizational performances, checking actual performance against these standards to make sure that the objectives are achieved as originally anticipated within the organization plans. So we can say that control is a basic managerial function which implies measurement and correction of performance of subordinates to ensure the predetermined objectives of the organization. Controlling consists of all those activities which are necessary to ensure the performances takes place in accordance to the targets laid down by the management. It involves taking corrective actions in case of performance is not satisfactory. Therefore, to sum up the meaning of controlling, we can say that controlling tells us where we are, that is the measurement part, where we plan to be, that's the evaluation phase, and then taking up the correct action is tracking of the performance. So, the managerial function of controlling is the measurement and the correction of performance in order to make sure that the enterprise objectives and plans devised are attained and accomplished in a stipulated period. There are some definitions which are given by various authors. For example, Henry Fayol stated that control consists in verifying whether everything occurs in conformity with the plans adopted, the instructions issued, and the principles established. Coons and EFL Breach have again given their definitions in the same regard. Moving to various features or the characteristics of the controlling process, we can state that control is a pervasive function. Control function of every manager along with other managerial functions like planning, organizing, staffing, directing. It is in fact a follow-up action to other functions of management. Managers at all levels have to perform this function to contribute to the achievement of the organization objective. The second is the review of past events. Control leads to appraisal of the past activities. Therefore, it is looking backward. The deviations in the past are revealed by control process. This is also known as feedback information. It will help in knowing the reasons of poor performances and facilitates taking corrective actions in the organization. The third feature is forward-looking. Control is linked with future as past cannot be controlled. A manager can take corrective action only in regard to future operations. Control is usually considered as preventive because presence of control system tends to minimize wastage, losses, and deviations from the standards. The third characteristics can be action-oriented. Control implies taking corrective measures. As we have seen in various definitions and the meaning of control, action is the essence of control. The purpose of control is achieved only when corrective action is taken on the basis of feedback information. It is only action which adjusts the performance of predetermined standards whenever deviations occur. And if you see, a good system of control facilitates timely action so that there is minimum wastage of time and energy while accomplishing the goals. The next feature of control process is it is a continuous process. Just like other management function, control is a continuous activity. It involves consistent and constant analysis of validity of standards, policies, procedures, and so on. It also suggests corrective actions in various processes. The next is dynamic process. Control is a dynamic process as it is flexible and not rigid. Control involves continuous review of standards of performance and results in a corrective action which may lead to change in performance of other functions of management. Management is basically managing a business entity which keeps on changing. Thus, managerial control is also dynamic. Management will be failing in its duty if the approach is not dynamic. Then we can state that control does not curtail the rights of individuals. For example, to some people, control is opposite to freedom. But it is not so. It is a preventive action so that losses may be avoided in the future. In fact, it is an act of guidance. Control in an enterprise is based on facts and figures, and its purpose is to achieve and maintain acceptable productivity from all the resources of the enterprise. Another feature can be a control system is a coordinated or an integrated system, as data collected from different purposes should be reconciled with one another, and control is a single system which accurately which is a single system which accurately facilitates or helps to think of it as a set of interlogging subsystems. Lastly, control is both an executive process and a result. Like each manager has to perform control functions in the organization, the nature, scope, limit of the control function may be different for different managers. Thus, the word control is preceded by an adjective to, to designate the control process. For example, the quality control process, inventory control process, production control process, administration control process, and so on. Now, moving to the process of controlling, the essential elements of control system are: number one, establishment of standards; secondly, measurement of the performance; thirdly, comparison of performance with the standards established; and lastly, taking the corrective action. So if we talk about the first step of the controlling process, that is the establishment of the control standards, it basically deals with setting up of standards for measurement of the performance. Standards represent the criteria for performances. A standard basically acts as a reference line or a basis of appraisal of actual performance. It should be set precisely and preferably in quantitative terms. It should be noted that setting standard is also closely linked with and is an integrated part of planning process. Standards used as a criteria or benchmarks by which performance is measured in the control process. Different standards of performance are set up for various operations at the planning stage. Therefore, establishment of standards in terms of quantity, quality, and time is necessary for effective control because it is essential to determine how the performance will be appraised. The second step in the control process is the measurement of the standards. The second step in the control process is measurement of standards. The second step in the control process, that is measurement of performance, has no sense unless it can be compared with some predetermined standards. Thus, these standards should be accurate, precise, acceptable, and workable. Otherwise, the objectives and a corrective action cannot be taken further. Standards should be flexible, that is, capable of being changed when the circumstances require so. Therefore, standard is bound to fail if it is based on records of past performances which flow either too high or too low for achievement. Moving on to the next step, which is involved in the controlling process, is the measurement of performance. After establishing the standards, the second step is to measure the actual performance of various individuals, groups, or units. Management should not depend upon the guess that standards are being met. It should measure the performance and compare it with the standards set earlier. The quantitative measurement should be done The quantitative measurement should be done in the cases where standards have been set in numerical terms. This will make evaluation easy and simple also. In all other cases, the performance should be measured in terms of qualitative factors, as in case of performance of industrial relations manager. His performance can be measured in terms of attitude of workers, frequency of strikes, the morale of the workers, and so on. Again, attitude and morale of workers are not capable of being measured quantitatively. They have to be measured qualitatively. The third step in the control process is comparison of actual performance with the set standards. Appraisal of performance or comparing of actual performance with predetermined standards is an important step, as comparison is easy where standards have been set in quantitative terms, for example, in production, marketing, and so on. Whereas in other cases, where results are intangible and cannot be quantitatively measured, direct personal observations, inspections, and reports are few methods which can be used for evaluation. The evaluation will reveal some deviations from the set standards. These deviations should point out the defects or deficiencies in the performances and investigate the causes responsible for such deviations. All deviations need not to be brought to the notice of top management. The deviation should be brought to the notice of top management when they are too high. A range of deviations should be established beyond which attention of the top management is warranted. Only such cases should be reported up which pinpoint exceptional situations. This is what is known as management by exception. If we talk about the control, if we say, according to Dale, he stated that the control report should meet their criteria. Firstly, control reports produce figures that are truly comparable from one period to another and from one section of the business to another. Secondly, he stated that they must be coordinated so that they do not only portray the results in different sections of the business, but also make plain the reasons why the business is or is not doing well as could be expected. And finally, they must be presented in such a form that the manager gets the bird's view eye. The last step involved in the controlling process is taking the corrective action. The final step in the controlling process is taking the corrective action so that deviations may not occur again and again and the objectives of the organizations are achieved well in time. This will involve taking certain decisions by the management like replanning or re-withdrawing of goals or standards, reassignment or clarification of duties, and so on. It may also be necessary. It may also be necessary in reforming the process of selection and training of workers. This control function may require change in all other managerial functions. If the standards are found to be defective, they will be set up again in the light of observation. It has been observed that a manager may commit two types of mistake at this stage. Number one, taking action when not action is taking action when no action is needed, and secondly, failing to take an action when some corrective action is needed. A good control system should provide women basis for helping the manager estimate. A good control system should provide basis for helping the manager to estimate the risk of taking either of these types of errors in the organization. Of course, the final test of control system is whether corrective action is taken at the correct time and at the correct place. So this was all about the controlling process. Thank you.